you heard then was a brief excerpt of a little recording session that I conducted. I had drums, bass, a couple of rhythm guitars and a lead guitar. And on your computer screen here, you can see the results in the blue blocks there. And if you look at the channels, I've got kick, snare, overhead, right, left and right bass, chord guitar, line guitar, and solo guitar. So if I open my mixing desk now, I'm going to show you first how it links up to this. Now, just before we carry on, you do need a multi-input and output audio interface for this to work properly. So I've got a Liquid Saffire Pro 56 here, which is the Focusrite audio interface. Any audio interfaces that have the inputs and outputs, you can do this with. You've got to have a lot of jack-to-jack cables as well. So we're going back to the old days of mass audio wiring. Now, if I open the mixing desk here, you can see that the kick and snare both feed the stereo output of my audio interface. That's outputs 1 and 2. And then output 3 and 4 is shared by the overheads left and right. And you can see that each channel is panned as well. So all the odd channels are panned left, all the even channels are panned right. Output 5 and 6 is shared with the bass and chord guitar. And then the line guitar, the other rhythm guitar and the lead guitar share outputs 7 and 8. So if I just bring all the faders down, 1 to 8, and press play, you won't hear anything. But I can start raising faders and you'll hear these drums. Okay, so far so good. We've got all the channels coming up, and of course you can put them through the desk channel. You can compress them a bit by turning the gain up until it sort of slightly distorts. You've got all the EQs, all the analog EQs that you could have. Great. Now, someone asked the question, well, how do you use the effects on Logic if you've got everything on faders here? Well, this desk has 4 auxiliary outputs. And what I've done is I've wired those outputs to some inputs on my audio interface, which come up on my mixing desk here with the aux 1, 2, 3 and 4. I've got inputs 2, 4, 6 and 5. Random selection. Now, I've got an effect on each of these stereo channels. I've got the chroma verb, which is a pretty half-decent reverb from Logic. Got a stereo delay, a phaser, and auto filter, sort of funky wah thing. But of course, if you've got some really properly flash plugins, like all the Waves plugins and the Abbey Road stuff, you can bring these up here and use these in exactly the same way. So I've got auxes 1 to 4, which are these little blue controls, inputting these auxiliaries. Now, the output of all of these effects comes back on these 2 channels here, 9 and 10. Ignore that one, that's my narration mic. 9 and 10 here. So that is my effects bus. Somebody says, well, I want to be able to EQ the reverb, but not the delay. Well, to a certain extent, you can do stuff on software and hardware, but you can also, if you've really got your heart set on a reverb, you could actually render it to computer by recording the pair of inputs from your effects device, so you can get round things that way. Now, if I just listen to the lead guitar on its own, for example, I've got my lead guitar track and my effects track here. Let's see what happens if I apply a little bit of effects using channel 1 or aux 1 on the desk here. That's going to feed my chroma verb on the computer. Here's the delay. So, I've set up my choice of effects on here, and I've got 4 effects with the 4 auxes here. Now that's what we would have had in the olden days, where I've got my quad reverb up in the rack there, and then a Boss reverb and an old delay, and then the Zoom 1201, the eponymous effects unit, basically doing the same job as this computer. Now, if I've got my mix here, I'd like to be able to compress something, but because I've got a board and I don't have any external compressors set up, you can use the compressors on board in Logic, but still mix in your analog way. So perhaps I'd want to compress the kick and the snare drum. So I can just do that, just find a compressor there, and a compressor on the snare drum, like that, and then I can monitor both. So kick on there, snare down here. So I can really fatten up the kick and the snare using the plugins on Logic or whatever digital audio workstation you're using, and then I've simply got the nice levels that I can listen to on the mixing desk. And of course I can EQ the snare. Do anything. You can even send this mix back to the computer, and that's what I'm going to do next. So if I just get rid of my compressors there, I have another track set up called Mix from Desk, which I've got on these two faders here. So I'm going to send all of my channels to 7 and 8. Now this of course includes the effects channel, so this is basically the same as if I'm rendering something to, you know, to a tape recorder or a CD recorder ready for release. So I'm going to press go on the computer and then see what we can do. Make sure our faders are up, and away we go. And there we go. We've now got a mix that is committed to the computer, which is exactly what went through the desk here. It just goes into another pair of inputs on my audio interface. So this took a little bit of setting up, but one thing you should do before you get started is to draw this as a diagram on a piece of paper, thinking how am I going to route these signals from here into the computer and vice versa. Now if I just go back, I did notice that the input level was quite high on my the computer here. So actually what I'm going to do is just quickly that's all right. What actually happened there was that I pushed the bus outputs and it almost gave it a little bit of compression into the computer. So actually this is very loud, and possibly a little bit too loud. If you're sending this to a mastering facility, for example, you'd want to give them something that isn't so compressed and limited. Really give them something that's maybe between -3 and -6 dB below full scale. That is really a, you know, you'll be liked for that. So it means they've got things to work with. They can boost frequencies, they can use their limiters, all of that sort of thing. So there is a method by which you would get a mixing desk and a computer to talk to each other in the olden days.